Hello viewers and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm going to be commentating over a pre-recorded match that I played against Eric Keilback, better known as Whiteblade, which was played for the 6th round of the 4th season of Sam Mann's Warhammer 40k Conquest Octagon WA Online Competitive League. And though at this point in my LCG career I've created a tremendous number of videos and interviewed practically innumerable tournament champions, my personal estimated total number of matches played is probably still under 20. So, while I frequently talk to experts and feel like I have rather strong potential, I'm still missing the wealth of experience and understanding of a great many fundamental aspects of gameplay that would certainly stand to make me a much more competent player. So, I definitely make more than my fair share of mistakes and suboptimal plays during this video, and for that very reason, I therefore ask that you please leave comments, constructively criticizing and making suggestions for what I could have done differently and how I could improve, because with your assistance, hopefully someday I'll indeed reach the level of skill and experience required to become a truly formidable competitive tournament player. So, if you enjoy this video and would like to see me play out and commentate more matches of my own, be sure to let me know in a comment. But in any case, let's get our video started with a match between myself as Ragnar Blackmane and Eric Keilback as Zarathur High Sorcerer. Alright, thank you very much for joining me today for yet another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest, and what makes today's featured game exceptionally special is the fact that this is the 6th round of the 4th season of Sam Mann's Warhammer 40k Conquest Octagon WA Online Competitive League. Last week, I was erroneously under the assumption that my loss at the hands of Glaive Guy meant that I was out of the running of a grand total of 50 entrants into the tournament. I was essentially no longer eligible to qualify for the top 16, but for better or worse, I was wrong, and I'm therefore back playing this very decisive match today. I'm about to take a mulligan, so in assessing my opening hand, I've got a lot of low resource cost, relatively command-capable units. I've got a Rattling Deadeye, which is great. I've got 2 Void Pirates and a promotion, but I also happen to have a copy of Ragnar's War Camp, and taken all together, considering that I'm up against a gentleman by the name of Eric Keilback, who's playing Zarathur High Sorcerer, I'm expecting a lot of direct damage events, and as much as Void Pirates are normally pretty powerful, I definitely like seeing Rattling Deadeyes. I just wanted some more formidable Space Marines combat units, especially evident when we take an assessment of our opening planet layout is each of our first 5 planets happens to have a strong point icon, so I was thinking that the more aggressive I could potentially be, I might be able to potentially secure some kind of early game victory, really leveraging Ragnar's damage-dealing ability just as much as I could, because the earlier I can win, the less opportunity I potentially give for my more practiced opponent to potentially outplay me. But the initiative token is in the hands of Zarathur. We end up seeing a Splintered Path Acolyte put out to planet number 3, and I immediately decide to trump that with a Sanctioned Psyker of my own, trying to make 2 command icons to surpass his 1. I definitely won a lot of cards coming in, since this is a very low-cost curve deck that I'm playing, and just in assessing my hand, I've got quite a lot of reasonable stuff I like to see. I've got a Blackmane Sentinel, which I'm about to put into play in order to contest the Rogue Trader at planet number 5 to try and starve Zarathur of a little bit of resources. I'm not going to be able to win command at that planet myself, but I like being able to put that Sentinel out there, block him from winning a card, winning a resource. Much to my dismay, he actually does something surprising here. I see Inquisitor Chaos Wrath put into play at planet number 1, and that's immediately going to force me to discard one of my valuable opening cards here. So just in trying to get rid of the least egregious loss, I end up sacrificing a copy of Promotion. It would have been nice. I could have maybe put it on my Blackmane Sentinel, but I was very much putting that into play at a planet further down the line, knowing full well that I'll likely readjust its position further up the line because I'm going to be so incredibly aggressive. But I put out a Catachan Outpost. My opponent puts a Promotion on his Acolyte at planet number 3, allowing him to trump my command there, and I happen to have a copy of Blackmane's Hunt here in my hand, so I know I've got a nice wide threat range for those first 3 planets that I'm really going to try to push to potentially win the game as quickly as possible. I also have a nice little distribution of events in my hand. I've got Indomitable for a cost of 1, I've got Drop Pod Assault for a cost of 2, and at the present moment, both of us players have passed in regard to deploy phase, and I'm trying to go into command, go into combat, thinking primarily, how can I try to win as many planets as possible? How can I, of course, try to get as much command phase income as I can, but primarily, how can I really push my opponent here? I end up going to planet number 1 just because I'm really trying to kill off his units, really trying to secure those early game victories, and since planet number 1 happens to be Planum, if I'd have simply allowed him to take that planet, he could have won it and then shifted his Inquisitor to any other planet to be a pain in my ass regardless. So I kind of bit the bullet here and decided to push the assault. I did not get the opportunity to trigger Ragnar Blackmane's ability because Zarathur ended up going to planet number 2, which didn't actually work out very favorably for my opponent. He must have thought I was trying to force a discard, but instead I'm going for that extremely aggressive playstyle. At this point, I chose not to relocate that Blackmane Sentinel. I was a little bit torn. I've got 2 resources, so if I want, I could do a Drop Pod Assault. I've got an Indomitable that I could use to shed off some attack damage, so I'm going to use this as a bit of an opportunity, especially considering I've got that Catachan Outpost here. It was my goal to either get my opponent to waste as many shield cards as I could, and or potentially bring in my Drop Pod Assault or Indomitable, either of those, depending on how combat unfolds, to kill off the Inquisitor and then just really keep pressing the offensive like I am incessantly mentioning. But combat at planet number 1 is about to begin, so I mentioned planet 1 is Planum, planet 2 is Ossus 4 that steals resources, planet 3 is Barlas, it's the random card discard, planet 4 is Yvarn, which puts units into play. I end up triggering that Catachan Outpost on Ragnar. I take a swing for 4, and what is our opponent here going to do for shields? During the command phase, it looks like Whiteblade ended up getting 2 cards, 0 resources. I got 1 card, 1 resource. I pulled in a Tactical Squad Cardenas, not tremendously useful. Eric discards a Warp Storm. So he only takes 3 points of damage. His Inquisitor ends up with 2 hit points remaining. A little later in the video, I end up forgetting that it actually has 5 hit points, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The Inquisitor takes a swing at me, and I didn't mention yet, but planet number 5, oh so importantly, is Iridial. So I'm thinking I can definitely push the offensive. I can go basically balls to the wall with having Ragnar take as much damage as possible, just because I want to kill off this Inquisitor. I want to force my opponent to have effectively wasted those resources. I've got initiative working in my advantage at the first planet. Eric's only got 1 resource, 3 cards in hand. I attack with Ragnar for 2. He ends up blocking it for 2 with a Tzeentch's Firestorm, so that's 1 fewer card in his hand. He takes a swing at me again, and I have a choice here. Do I want to Indomitable? Do I want to take this damage? Do I want to Drop Pod Assault at the end of the round? And I end up deciding no. If I want, I can send my Warlord to Iridial at some point. I've got that Blackmane's Hunt. I'm really kind of testing my opponent here. How hard can I push things? how are things going to turn out? So the combat round concludes, and I actually see Inquisitor Caius Roth decide to retreat, so that works for me. I don't actually have much of anything to do with that battle ability. Actually, that's not true at all. I do. I use that to relocate my Sanctioned Psyker from planet 3 to planet 4. So instead of sitting going up against that Acolyte that has 3 command icons, potentially having it be killed by Zarathur and the Acolyte, both attacking for 2, I decide to shift him to our soon-to-be planet number 3, just so he can win me at least 1 resource. The random card discard from Barlas ends up being a copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, so Zarathur won his combat, Ragnar won his combat. I've got 1 green strong point icon, I've got 1 blue technology icon. We end up seeing our headquarters phase occur, so Whiteblade, 5 resources, 5 cards. I have 6 resources, 5 cards. I reel in Sanctioned Psyker and Rattling Deadeye for some nice range skirmish Catachan outpost action, but considering that my opponent is Zarathur, who's got a predilection for direct damage effects along the lines of that Warp Storm, that Tzeentch's Firestorm, I saw discarded. The Rattling Deadeye is a little bit of a dangerous proposition for me, but our new planet number 5 is going to be Taurus. At the present moment, I have 3 units relative to Zarathur's 4, and that could definitely change at any moment based on him sacrificing his Acolyte, him sacrificing units, and I've got my basically sights dead set on these first several planets. I put out Rattling Deadeye to our new planet number 1, which is Barlas, and immediately things start to get a little bit more complicated for me because we end up seeing a copy of Orc Cannon put out into Zarathur's HQ, so I've now got the initiative token, but that's of course going to allow him the opportunity to assign 2 points of direct damage to any planet where Zarathur happens to reside, or if it doesn't happen to be a planet with Zarathur, he can just outright kill it. So I was considering sending Ragnar to Iridial at this point, potentially using that Drop Pod Assault to back up my Rattling Deadeye at planet number 1. If Zarathur would have gone there, I could have tried to press the offensive there, but as soon as that Orc Cannon hits the table, I know immediately, okay, if combat occurs, he could just use the Orc Cannon, kill off my Rattling Deadeye. I don't want to use any of the cards in my hand as shields, and then I'll either be forced to forego that planet, it'll just disappear into the nether, or worse, Zarathur will win it, and he'll steal a resource from me. So that kind of convinces me that I need to play commit Ragnar to planet number 1. But I do a Sanctioned Psyker to planet number 5. I'm currently down to 3 resources, 3 cards, but I'm pretty much out of things that I'd like to play. And talk about frustrating plays put out by my opposition here. Whiteblade uses a couple of his remaining resources, one of his leftover cards, and he puts a Snakebite Thug into play at planet number 1 after I've already passed. And to make matters even worse, we end up seeing a Rogue Trader put out to planet number 4, so both of us are deciding where to send warlords. I, of course, think, okay, I'll send Ragnar to planet number 1, I'll shift over my Blackmane Sentinel, things are likely going to work out great. If I need, I can use that Drop Pod Assault, but I shift over my Planet Committance window here because I'm just trying to make up my mind. Should I forego the first planet, or should I push it? I think if Zarathur goes to the first planet, I really want to try to punish him for doing that, so I guess I end up going to planet number 2 with Ragnar, just in case we see Zarathur go there. I'm not exactly sure what I was thinking in hindsight going to planet number 2 as opposed to just biting the bullet and going to planet number 1, but I suppose I just wanted to think, I'll move Ragnar to planet number 1 if I have to, or if Zarathur goes someplace unexpected, I'll just kind of see how things go. So I suppose that was just me buying myself some additional information. But as it comes time to start triggering reactions in order, I have Ragnar target initially, I believe I changed my mind. Eric and I are on Skype, so we're kind of talking this out, but I believe my initial thought was the Inquisitor, but then ultimately I changed to the Snakebite Thug with my thinking here, and my being bogged down in thought is about to come back and punish me. I'm thinking I've got initiative, I can deal a little bit of damage to the Thug, and then I can Catachan outpost one of my units, like Ragnar, to essentially guarantee a kill, hopefully before it's going to be able to attack me for 4. And this was also with me being under the impression that the Rattling Deadeye could potentially deal the one remaining damage to kill off Inquisitor Caius Roth. And to my dismay, what did I forget? Once again, the Blackmane Sentinel that I've left at planet number 4. Does it look like I can win command at that planet? Of course not. So the Blackmane Sentinel has 1 command icon, my opponent has 2. He's already winning 2 resources and 1 card thanks to those that Rogue Trader duo. And of course, because this is a league match, Eric does not allow me to do a takesy backsies and trigger that reaction, so, I definitely could not expect anybody to allow that. But 3 cards, 2 resources for Eric, 1 card, 2 resources for me, and combat is about to begin at the first planet. Once again, my ranged skirmish attacker is going to take a shot at Inquisitor Caius Roth. For whatever reason, I guess his printed 4 cost, like a fool, I thought that would be the 1 remaining hit point. So in hindsight, I'd have maybe had that Rattling take a shot at the Snakebite Thug just to guarantee that it would be killed. I could have used the Catachan Outpost on the Rattling Deadeye and killed the Snakebite Thug, but I was very much afraid that I would see something along the lines of a Tzeentch's Firestorm kill that Rattling Deadeye after I'd used the Outpost on it. So Ragnar benefits from the Outpost, and both my units are exhausted. The Inquisitor is exhausted, and now Zarathur is going to take a swing. He decides to attack that Rattling Deadeye. So the Rattling Deadeye is destroyed, and now we're going to come to the end of the combat round here. So I do end up deciding, I believe, to play that Drop Pod Assault, and now let's take a gander at my top 6 cards. And what's kind of funny about this is if you watch carefully, I tried to very carefully orchestrate the order in which I return these cards to the bottom of my deck, and I bungle it big time. I believe I wanted the Eager Recruit nearest to the top, and I screw it up, and it is at the absolute bottom because I actually failed to put it at the bottom of my deck there. It just bounced straight back. But a Blood Angels Veterans I was fortunate enough to grab. I certainly would have taken this. It's probably better in a sense than something like an Honored Librarian, just given the presence of that Orc Cannon at the planet, given opportunities available with things like Tzeentch's Firestorm, just because 2 hit points is so much more fragile than 3 plus negating a point of damage. But the Blood Angels Veterans takes a swing. I make sure to target Zarathur. Tzeentch's Firestorm sheds off 2 points of that damage, and the reason I didn't want to target the Inquisitor is because I know that I'm going to be staying at the planet. I'm not going to be retreating, so I'll get the opportunity to attack first, and I'm fairly confident in being able to kill off the Inquisitor. So I did end up seeing a point of damage dealt out to Zarathur by that Orc Cannon. I distribute both points of damage to the Blood Angels Veterans. Our combat round is about to come to a close, and I decide to stay, and then what exactly are we going to see for Whiteblade? I suppose he decides that he himself is going to stay, so my Blood Angels Veterans takes a swing, kills off his Inquisitor, and now it's all going to be up to Zarathur. So what exactly are we going to see? Zarathur takes a swing at me, and I happen to draw an Iron Halo, so I put that into play, well, discarded as shield cards, so 2 is reduced to 0, and now Zarathur isn't looking too good at all. I'm not fortunate enough to have a couple crushing blows in my hand, but Ragnar takes a swing. Zarathur ends up taking 2 points of damage. Note that Iridial is indeed planet number 4, but now we come to the end of another combat round. I choose to stay at that planet, really pushing that offensive, and at the moment I'm feeling pretty good about my odds here. I've been able to bully these first several planets. Even my mistake forgetting to relocate that Blackmane Sentinel at the present moment doesn't seem like it was so bad, so I ended up pulling through. I'm not really sure in hindsight how that would have influenced combat, but, things ended up fine, and during the following round, if I need to relocate that Blackmane Sentinel, I could do so, and it'll be ready to attack, but we end up seeing our headquarters phase. Everything's ready. ready. Both players draw 4 resources and 2 cards. I end up seeing an Eager Recruit, Tactical Squad Cardenas. At this point, I'm starting to get far more resources than I have cards. I've only got 4 resources worth of cards in my hand, so I'm starting to assess how can I try to get more cards for myself. Zarathur puts out his 3rd copy of the Rogue Trader to planet number 5, our newly unveiled Aatrox Prime. And now I'm thinking, okay, if I can just push planet number 1, I can win the game. I can seal the deal. Things are looking pretty good. Ragnar could go to that planet. The Blood Angels vets will show up exhausted, but I can move in that Blackmane Sentinel. Things could work out pretty well, but of course, Zarathur has to throw a spanner in my best laid of plans. He puts yet another frustrating copy of the Snakebite Thug out to planet number 1, and all of a sudden things are starting to look bad, and they're getting immediately worse. The Rotten Plague Bearers also interplay at planet number 1, and that means he's going to be able to have the initiative token. He'll be able to attack with that Snakebite Thug for 4, presuming Zarathur touches down at that planet, but the Rotten Plague Bearers are also going to have an opportunity to attack for 2 prior to my being able to do absolutely anything. So now things are starting to look a little bit more difficult for me. Given my level of experience, I often approach these matches with a mindset of I'm going to try to get this over with as early as possible. So I'm normally very reticent to kind of readjust my strategy and play like with the long game in mind. So normally I play very aggressive to start, and then only when I absolutely have to, I kind of reassess things and then adapt. But I'm thinking, okay, I've got 2 strong point icons. My opponent has no planet types. Why don't I just go to planet number, I suppose I choose 3 so that I can best those rogue traders there. Planet number 2 would have also been a decent option, but I'm just trying to get as much income for myself as I can. Definitely not to my surprise, we see Zarathur go to planet number 1, but I think it would have been a very amateur mistake to send Ragnar to planet number 1 and just really try to push the offensive when I don't have any business winning there. I feel much more confident that I can set myself up at our soon-to-be planet number 2 or even planet number 3 just to get a secured victory. Just because if that Plague Bears shows up exhausted, commit to a planet, it's not going to be able to hit me, and the same thing goes with that nasty as hell Snakebite Thug. So command phase comes and goes. 3 cards, 2 resources for Eric, 2 cards, 2 resources for yours truly, and now combat is going to erupt at the first planet. That Orc Cannon is ready. Zarathur's amplifying all the damage of any units present at his planet. The Snakebite Thug is going to be swinging for a grand total of 4, and I've got a Primal Howl, I've got a Frostfang, but I'm asking myself, should I bother shielding? The answer is no. The Snakebite Thug would have, killed me. Let's say I used Frostfang. I'd have still taken a point of damage. The Plague Bears would have been another 2 points of damage, and the unit would have died. So basically, no matter what, I could have done like an area effect volley 1 under the best of conditions. My random card discard ended up being a discard of Indomitable, and I actually happened to forget here. Not only was planet number 3 a fantastic choice because it allowed me to best the rogue traders there, but it also happened to be Iridial, so I was besting my opponent in command, and I'm also having Ragnar activating a battle at Iridial, and as we see, presently I'm pulling a bunch of damage, 6 points of damage off Ragnar, which is going to be fantastic to get him back in the thick of things and being hyper-aggressive. We see that Orc Cannon actually activate, though, at Iridial. He lost one of his rogue traders that would have died anyways. I tossed a point of damage onto my Blackmane Sentinel, and then my Blackmane Sentinel finishes off that second rogue trader. So we go through our HQ phase once again. I reel in a Void Pirate and another copy of Drop Pod Assault, whereas Whiteblade, who knows what he drew, but he's got 7 resources and 8 cards. Once again, my resources are starting to become quite the issue for me because I've got 12 resources, 5 cards, and taking a look at my hand, I've got Frostfang, I've got the Eager Recruit, I've got Void Pirate. I think at this point in my career, I'm not even looking at Frostfang to actually play it. But, I've got that Catachan's Outpost. And now I'm a little bit kind of frustrated with what my options here are because I've got a Void Pirate and I don't have any big daunting units. I'd have loved to draw like, gosh, Blood Angels Vets, Honored Librarians, something that actually has a little bit of oomph to it, something that can deal out some damage. Planet number 1 is going to potentially decide the game. If I could win a battle there, then that's going to be it. So Whiteblade only has that one green strong point icon. I've got 2 green strong point icons. Everything has a green icon save for Aatrox Prime, so now it's going to be up to Zarathur to just try and block me off at the first planet each and every opportunity he has to do so, and if I'd have drawn some combat units, for Christ's sake, that would have been an absolutely fantastic opportunity for me to actually, leverage some favorable conditions, because if all of his stuff is showing up exhausted, I'll actually need units to be able to kill it. So we saw a very early pass from me. He ended up putting out another Orc Cannon and 2 Chaos Fanatics, so extremely frustrating, and that makes me think, why bother pushing that first planet? So Zarathur is almost certainly going to have to send his, just units there to try to ensure that I don't win at the first planet. For all he knows, I've got 2 additional drop pod assaults and an Eagle Recruit in my hand, and that would definitely make short work of his Chaos Fanatics, so I feel like he's forced to go to planet number 1, so I think at the present moment I'm just not going to bother. I forget where exactly I do send Ragnar, but I've still got things looking pretty good for me in an economy sense. I was hoping to generate a card from that Void Pirate that I put at the first planet, just in hope of drawing an Eagle Recruit or something. Looks like I do actually choose to go to planet number 1, and I guess my thought process here, as opposed to sending to Aatrox Prime, was just because, just like we see, I can move in my kind of Blackmane Sentinel there and at least try to deal out as much damage as possible. So I suppose I misspoke a little bit earlier, but my ultimate goal in doing this move was that knowing that even though those Chaos Fanatics are going to be showing up, this is going to be a great opportunity with me holding the initiative token to potentially bloody Zarathur. And of course, we've got the Snakebite Thug exhausted. That Rotten Plague Bears isn't going to get the opportunity to attack me. So now it's all going to come down to, can I bloody Zarathur, and then how much of this stuff can I kill off? I've got that Drop Pod Assault in my hand, I've got a Primal Howl, and now I'm just trying to see what exactly am I going to reel in event-wise, and I've got that Eagle Recruit. So if this battle ends up being won, great. If not, that's also fine. So Ragnar, coming down to the planet, I end up triggering his reaction, targeting Zarathur, and I suppose what I actually should have done in hindsight is triggered my Primal Howl's reaction first, and then done Ragnar's ability, because even though I didn't end up drawing a copy of Crushing Blow, if I would have, seeing as how he was only able to shield against 1 point of damage, that would have been an incredible opportunity for me to bloody Zarathur and then save myself an attack, and it would have made potentially winning the game at this planet all the easier. So the initiative token is going to be in my hands. So I've got 12 resources, I've got 8 cards. Whiteblade has 5 resources, 5 cards. I drew a bunch of hot garbage during the command phase here, so 2 cards, Sanction Psyker and Void Pirate. He instead gets 1 card and 3 resources, so he's certainly got all manner of nasty chaos events in his hand, I can only assume. Seeing as how Zarathur is likely to be bloodied, he's triggering his Orc Cannons now. I end up assigning all of that damage to my Sanction Psyker, and that's going to be destroyed. I was contemplating, should I kill off my Void Pirate, just in case I maybe pull a Drop Pod Assault, but I suppose, all in all, there's not too much of a difference. If for some miracle the Void Pirate lives and I retreat, it's more beneficial than the Sanction Psyker with, 3 points of damage, so I just distribute the damage like that, but knowing that Zarathur might have his 3 shield icon card in hand, I use Catachan's Outpost on Ragnar so that there's no Tzeentch's Firestorm or any stuff like that preventing me from that Warlord bloodying, and I immediately have the option. I hit Zarathur, totally unshielded. He ends up bloodied, and he's immediately sent away from the planet, and now I've got these 2 Chaos Fanatics to deal with, in addition to all of this nasty remaining stuff. So to my dismay, to my horror, I see a Zarathur's Flamers put into play by an Infernal Gateway, the Chaos version of Drop Pod, and that's going to be attacking for 2, sacrifice for 2, and that's incredibly frustrating. So it attacks me, it attacks my Blackmane Sentinel that is yet to attack, and here's a little bit of a mistake that in hindsight I'd have done differently. I end up using Frost Fang for shields. What I wish I would have done in retrospect is used Indomitable to block the attack, because as I knew he was going to do, Zarathur's Flamers ends up sacrificed to deal its 2 points of damage to the Blackmane Sentinel. So if I'd have used that Indomitable and then Frostfang, I could have done both, but seeing as how Indomitable doesn't prevent card effect damage, I was not afforded that opportunity. So hoping that I will draw something good, hoping and praying for an Honored Librarian with this Drop Pod Assault, I play it. And can anyone tell me in the comments section how many Space Marine units I ended up seeing in my top 6 cards here? Crushing Blow, not a Space Marine unit. Ragnar's Warcamp, Rogue Trader, Void Pirate, Rattling Deadeye. Great cards, normally love to see them. Really could have used an Honored Librarian right now, so thank you for nothing, Drop Pod Assault. It whiffs, and immediately my hopes and dreams of contesting winning this planet go out the window, because let me tell you, that totally sucks, and I'm sure my opponent was, whether or not he'd been sweating bullets at any point, he definitely is not now, but I put out a copy of Eager Recruit. Fortunately, I don't end up seeing any event played to blow him apart prior to his opportunity to attack, so he's ambushed into play, and again, Eric and I are on Skype. I quickly say, instead of that Chaos Fanatics, I want to deal a damage, well, potentially 2 damage. Promise of Glory brings it down to 1 to that Snakebite Thug, just because I would have loved if it could have only attacked once, and then I could have Indomitabled against it, and then it would have killed itself through its forced reaction. But Chaos Fanatics exhaust to take a swing. I don't want to use my Indomitable to keep them alive. I definitely do think about it, but as soon as all of these units ready, that Snakebite Thug, the, damage-dealing Rotten Plague Bearers, it's just not going to be enough, I think. Mathematically, I suppose there's a chance it could have worked out, but I just was not willing to take that risk. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, okay, it's fine. The Chaos Fanatics killed my Eager Recruit. Another one of them exhausts, deals a point of damage to Ragnar. There's a little bit of a confusion in just a moment where we were actually uncertain as to whether it had actually attacked. But instead of Ragnar taking a couple points of damage, it indeed is only 1 from that Chaos Fanatics attacking once. And then that is going to shortly bring us to the end of the combat round here. For the next turn, I've got that Blood Angels Veterans set up at our soon-to-be planet number 1, which is going to be fantastic. Iridial is going to be a great, potentially final planet for me, because even though it kind of sucks that I'm going to have to retreat, I do end up retreating here. The Orc Cannons, if he chooses to fire them at Iridial, I can just simply assign that damage to the Blood Angels Veterans. They prevent it, and, if Zarathur's at that planet, guess what? He's bloodied, so he's not going to be amplifying that damage. And the planet that was under contest was Yvarn. Its battle ability is each player puts a unit into play from his hand at his HQ. Whiteblade actually decides to trigger this ability, and now I'm in a little bit of a tricky choice. He puts out a Gleeful Plague Beast. I've got an Honored Librarian, I've got a Blackmane Sentinel, Sanctioned Psyker, and a Void Pirate. I opt for the Void Pirate, and here's why. I've got such a tremendous wealth of resources in my hand. All of his crap is going to be showing up exhausted to our soon-to-be first planet, and I want each and every attack that I can possibly get prior to my opponent having any opportunity to attack me in return. So I hang on to that Honored Librarian, that Blackmane Sentinel, wanting to put them into play, ready to deal out as much damage as possible before all of this nasty garbage that my opponent has can ready and get in some attacks back at me. So the HQ phase comes and goes. Iron Guard recruits into second copy of Catachan Outpost. Happen to be the lucky cards that I drew. I would have loved another copy of Drop Pod Assault for as well as that turned out for me. And I'm sitting at 13 resources, 6 cards. My opponent has 5 resources, 2 cards. So I put out my second copy of Catachan Outpost, trying to kind of starve him of deploy actions, wanting to withhold my army units for as long as possible. I'm definitely not thrilled to see that Noise Marine Zealots put out to planet number 1 because that's guaranteed to be attacking for 4. My opponent has the initiative. That kind of sucks for me. We end up seeing Whiteblade play out, to my surprise, a copy of Warp Storm, so it's going to be 2 damage to each unit in my HQ, and I end up assigning 2 points of damage to Ragnar and having both of those Void Pirates die. So it definitely kind of sucks that the Honored Librarian doesn't get to have a couple more bodies on the planet protecting him. But seeing as how that Gleeful Plague Beast is almost certainly going to be touching down at that planet anyways, I'm okay with that. So, better to have had Void Pirates at all than to have lost them, or whatever the saying is. But I end up putting out a copy of the Blackmane Sentinel just for funsies and to kind of confuse my opponent ever so slightly. I end up putting that out to planet number 3. He immediately puts out a Splintered Path Acolyte to, I suppose, trump me in command, and rest assured I was not going to forget to trigger its reaction again, so I'm okay with having that Blackmane Sentinel there. Gonna relocate it. There's no question in my mind. Yes, I'm sending Ragnar to planet number 1. I guarantee that my opponent's gonna be sending Zarathur to planet number 1. I end up putting out the Sanctioned Psyker to planet number 1 just to serve as an additional body to absorb attacks for the Honored Librarian, and then I was a little bit conflicted here. I end up putting out a copy of the Iron Guard Recruits to planet number 3. I definitely thought about putting them at planet number 1 just to be another body to serve as a blocker for my Honored Librarian. But thinking about it, Whiteblade only has 1 resource and 0 cards. I know that if he's allowed to win command at planet number 3, that'll be 2 resources and 1 card for him, and I definitely want to try and starve him of that. So I think that's better than just another body that, granted, can attack for 1. So I just want to try to choke him as much as possible. So I'm at 2 resources, 1 card. My opponent's at 1 resource, no card, and now it's all going to come potentially down to this. I've got my dial set to the first planet. Zarathur happens to have his dial set to the first planet. Both of us are going to end up committing, and now I've got a slew of different reactions to trigger. The first reaction I trigger, just in case, to make sure I don't forget it, is going to be sending that Blackmane Sentinel to planet number 1. And now there's going to be a few different things taking place. So Ragnar Blackmane, I end up triggering his ability on the Noise Marine Zealots, once again thinking in my mind that if Zarathur ends up getting his 3 shield attachment, I'll be able to use the Outpost to boost up a unit to guarantee a kill, because even a 1 remaining hit point, 4 minus 3 is 1. So my Honored Librarian could kill off his Zealot or a Sentinel or Ragnar, any different number of things there. But we're going to see combat phase begin. He did not shield against Ragnar's ability. For command, I'm able to successfully deny that very final planet of my opponent, and I end up getting 2 cards, 1 resource. 1 is relevant to combat. I'm very happy to see that eager recruit. Just to do a bit of bookkeeping, my opponent ends up exhausting that rotten plague bears that they had, and now we can see just units being scoured from the board by the Gleeful Plague Beast. So both copies of his Chaos Fanatics die, his Splintered Path Acolyte with the attached promotion dies, my Blood Angel's Vet takes nothing. We see his Orc Cannon exhaust, and I can simply choose to add that damage to my Blood Angel's Veterans, so I'd be attacking last with the Veterans just to make sure that it can absorb as many Orc Cannon volleys as possible. My Psyker took a point of damage, as did my Librarian, Ragnar, the Sentinel, but I've got Indomitable, I've got Eager Recruit, and all I had to deal with is Zarathur, who's going to retreat at the earliest possibility, and although we cannot see it over Skype, my opponent calls out GG, so an extremely good game, extremely well played by Eric, and I suppose that brings our match to a close. So in checking with Sam Mann, that means that thus far into the 4th season of his Octagon WA competitive online league, I've won 4 matches, I've lost 2 matches, which means that out of a grand total of 50 entrants, I guess originally there were 56, 6 ended up dropping out. I've successfully managed to make it to the top 16, so once again, kudos to Eric, to Whiteblade, for a game exceptionally well played, very narrow, but I feel like despite a few mistakes, I've made a few excellent choices in this video. I was able to bring it back from a pretty crappy situation with that drop pod assault whiffing, costing me potentially winning the game earlier than I may have otherwise done. And I feel like I was just able to kind of adapt to situations as they presented themselves. So once again, thank you so much, Eric, for the match. Thank you for allowing me to record. And of course, to all of you, thank you as ever for watching. And as always, I suppose I'll just end this video by saying, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. Or if you are already subscribed, you're encouraged to share this content, as the more eyes there are on videos like this one, the more people might stumble across these games, end up giving Conquest a try, liking what they see, joining our community, and of course, sending the message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to do so through Facebook or through Twitter, and of course, if you feel like kicking me $1 or $2 donation on a strictly monthly basis to help me recover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, I'd be honored if you were to visit my Patreon. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.